It's now recording. Great. Yeah, so hi, everyone. Really excited to have you here. It's a big moment for us at the v-ATPase Alliance. This is sort of the first major research initiative that are put our efforts on. And so we're really thankful and excited for you to be here. So, this is officially will mark our live or going live with the patient registry. And, we've tried to give you a lot of information, in advance and as we were coming to this day. But essentially, patient registries are really, really important for communities like ours in the rare disease space, where, I'm sure you've face this on a daily basis, talking with your doctors. They don't know much about the disease. No one really knows. Everything is very recent. And it's really efforts like this that will allow us to understand what this disease looks like, what are the major symptoms, and what are the main burdensome causes or consequences of this disease. And so it will be very informative for us to understand how the disease progresses, how heterogeneous it is, but also so we'll learn a lot about our disease, and we'll have we can use that to have informed discussions with our doctors. But it's also a very important research tool, like in the video that I sent a few days ago, if there are some therapies that might be of potential interest for v-ATPase disorders, we really need a tool like this in order to assess safety and efficacy. Like in a rare disease like ours, there's no way there's going to be a treatment arm and a placebo arm, which is how common clinical trials are tested, or drugs are tested in clinical trials. And so this is really a landmark initiative for us. We're going to learn a lot about it from our partners at Global Genes and RareX, who did the hard work to develop this platform and find an important way to collect all this information into a way that is usable for researchers and for research. But I'll let them go through all the details. It's really my pleasure to introduce you to Caitlin Peters at Global Genes and Bridget Michaels at RareX. They are here to show us the platform and how it works and answer all the questions you might have. And so without further ado, I'll pass it on to you guys, and please take it away. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Awesome. So hi, everyone. My name is Bridget, and my colleague Caitlin is also on the call. We're from RareX, which is a program of Global Genes. So I'm going to give a little presentation about RareX. If you have questions during, feel free to put them in the chat, and Caitlin will kind of man the chat, and we'll also have time at the end to go through any questions you have. All right. So welcome everyone to the v-ATPase RareX launch party to launch your data collection program. So what is RareX? RareX is a program of Global Genes that was created to accelerate rare disease research and treatments by removing barriers for data collection and sharing. RareX is a platform to collect, connect, and share data. RareX is not a replacement for any current research or clinician-sponsored patient registry. So why did your community leaders choose RareX? They chose RareX because RareX is a global data collection platform. We have a data privacy team that makes sure that we are we follow standard compliance in all countries. The data that you put into RareX is patient owned and managed. So it's not owned by RareX, and it's also not owned by your organization. There's no cost to patients or organizations to join on with RareX. And there's also no cost to researchers to access the data on RareX. The data that we collect on RareX is in a structured and standardized format that researchers can find really useful, and it's validated surveys and measures. All the governance is handled, so RareX handles all of the technical data privacy things within IRB and all of those things for your organization. And RareX streamlines researcher access to data. De-identified data is made available in the Federated Data Access Platform for researchers to access. So why is RareX good for you as a patient or a caregiver? RareX collects data on all systems of the body, which will allow for a better understanding of the disease overall. Summary data will be returned to your community so that you guys can compare your symptoms with others in the same disease community. You'll have the ability to update or change your symptoms in the RareX program at any time. You can reach more researchers worldwide, and you have the ability to manage who uses your data, as it is patient-owned data. The slide shows the patient's journey into the data collection platform, which we call the DCP. So in the very first step here, you're going to come in via your patient community, v-ATPase, and you'll go to your group's community page. From there, you'll be able to enroll in the data collection platform, where you'll agree to the matrix terms of use and the patient consent and your data sharing preference survey. After all those things are done, you'll get to your data dashboard where you'll see surveys for you to complete. What do you need to get started? So to get started, you'll need an email address and to create a password. You'll need an approved browser. We suggest Chrome, Safari, or Microsoft Edge. Internet Explorer and Mozilla do not work as well. But what do you not need to get started? You do not need a lot of time, and you do not need to finish all at once. So RareX is really meant to come in and register. And if you only have 10 minutes at the moment, that's great. You can come in, register, and come back at another time. We also encourage you to come back and update your symptoms over time. This is what your community page looks like. So this is the v-ATPase Data Collection Program community page. The very first time that you'll go to get started with RareX, you'll click this big red Get Started button, and you'll be able to create your account. And Caitlin will send this link in the chat. Any other time you go to log in, you'll just be able to click this blue login button. So this is kind of the go-to page to bookmark so that you can come back to the DCP. Once you click that red Get Started button for the very first time, you're going to see this pre-qualifications page where you'll enter your name, email address, phone number, and here you'll indicate if you are a patient, a caregiver, or a person who has lost a loved one to a rare disease. So in this space, you are able to select more than one. If you yourself identify as a patient and also are a caregiver, you can select both of those options. If you're just a caregiver and going to want to enter a patient later, you'll be able to select caregiver and then go in and enter your patient at a later date. Once you go through that first step, you're going to receive an email to create a password, and this will just be a very standard process of creating a password through the email verification. If you don't receive this email within a few minutes, we ask that you reach out to support or check your spam folder. It should come to you within 10 minutes of creating the account. Okay, so the very first time you go to create that password, you will have to enter your email address and go through a verification process where you'll receive a code and have to re-enter that code to create your password. This is the only time you'll have to go through this two-step verification, is when you create your account. Any other time, you'll go back, click that login button, and just enter your email and password. This is what the login page looks like for the RareX DCP. Like I said, anytime you go to log in, you'll enter your email address and your password. At the bottom here, you'll see the privacy policy, which is the Global Genes privacy policy, and the terms of use. The terms of use are the Matrix terms of use, and Matrix is the software that hosts the RareX platform, so the software vendor. So that is their terms of use there. You'll be able to access these on this page at any time. After you log in, the very first time, it's going to send you to what we call a mandatory workflow, where you go through consenting, entering some general information, and selecting your data preferences. The very first page of that will be accepting these Matrix terms of use. And like I said, Matrix is just the software that we host RareX on. So I'll accept those terms of use. And then you will get to the informed consent. So this will be 8 pages of detailed Q&A to ensure you understand RareX. You'll be able to scroll through all 8 pages of the consent, and all will have these little blue Learn More buttons where you can click out at any time to further read about something. Once you've scrolled through the consent, you'll be able to officially get to the signing part of consenting. Up top, you'll indicate why you're taking taking part in the RareX DCP. Likely, you will be indicating that you are the parent or caregiver of a person who may have a rare disease and consenting as such. When you do this, if you're enrolling as a caregiver, you are consenting as the caregiver. You are not yet consenting on behalf of the patient. There'll be some questions here about how you want RareX to be able to contact you. And then you'll get to our informed consent signature line. So you'll indicate here that you are the parent or caregiver, and your signature below indicates the following things, and you'll officially consent. From that consent, you'll get sent into the general information demographics collection page where you enter some basic info, name, date of birth, address, stuff like that. You'll be able to enter your race and state. There will be prefer not to answer boxes on all of those. And again, if you are enrolling first as a caregiver and are going to add a patient later, this information here, this general information, will be about yourself as the caregiver. It is not yet the patient's name. All right, so once you've completed that process, you've officially completed what we call the mandatory workflow, and you have been popped out onto what we call the dashboard. Every time you log in moving forward, you're gonna just come right to this dashboard page. On this dashboard page, we're on what we call right now the caregiver dashboard, where you have the opportunity to add a patient to your account. You have the ability to add multiple patients if that's the case for you. So you'll click this blue button here to add a patient. This in the upper left-hand corner of the dashboard will always show which dashboard you are on. So for instance, we see Marilyn here as the caregiver, but she is viewing a dashboard for her patient, Macy. If there was a different patient under her account, she may have a different, she could toggle between whose patient account she was viewing. All right, so once you go to add that patient, you're going to get taken back into some mandatory steps about demographic info and consenting for the patient this time. So now that you're adding the patient, you're adding the patient's name, date of birth, all of the answers are about the patient. On this patient page, you will get down to the bottom where there will be the place to select your rare disease community. You all should see v-ATPase listed in this drop-down menu. And you selecting that choice there is kind of what ties you back to the community on the back end for the data. There also is the ability to select more than one disease in the drop-down menu or to select other, and there will be a free text box for you to type things in. All right, after you go through that general information for the patient, you're going to get into the data sharing preferences. This is kind of how you decide how you want your participants' data to be shared, as it is patient-owned data. So the most broad type and that most people select is general research. When you select general research, researchers may use your participants' data for health, medical, and biomedical research, but also other kinds of studies that may not be related to health. If you would like, you have the ability to limit your data use to only researchers who are using it for health, medical, and biomedical research. So that is an option you can select there. Most people ask us, how can I get my research shared the most widely as possible? And that would be this general research button here. And this can be updated at any time. There are some other limits you can place on your data if you would like to. You would like to set your data for only non-commercial purposes. That is an option that you can put on your data, or only research that has been approved by an institutional review board in IRB. You can choose to set that limit on your data as well. And both of those as well can be updated at any time. Okay, so next in the data sharing survey, it's going to go ahead and ask you some questions about biospecimens and some additional questions about how you want to be contacted by RareX. On this page, you will see a question asking if you want to share your contact information with the patient advocacy groups that support your diagnosis. When we refer to contact information here, it is first name, last name, and email address only. And this first name, last name, email address will never be linked to your data in any way. So if you're selecting yes here, essentially your first name, last name, and email would go on a list of emails that we can give back to your community leaders so that they can reach out to you all about advocacy events or organization events or things like that. It is not attached to your data. This next question asks if you would like your data included on the summaries on the RareX DCP data dashboard. So your community leaders also will have access to what we call the data dashboard, where they'll be able to see some combined participant data about overall number of participants in your community, and overall number of symptoms and things like that. You can choose if you would like your data to be included here or not. Again, it is not identified data, it's just a combined data set. Again, these can be updated at any time. All right. The next step you're going to get to in this kind of mandatory process is a question asking if you have any genetic test documents to upload. You'll have this upload option here. And you'll also have this box here, I do not have any genetic test documents to upload. If you do not have them at the time of account creation, don't worry, you'll be able to upload it later. So checking this box and saying I do not have any documents does not prevent you from ever uploading those genetic test reports. But thinking ahead, if you go to enroll in the program, it could be a good idea to have those genetic test reports ready to upload when you go through. Right, so after that, you've officially completed kind of the mandatory consenting data sharing process. And that's the only time you'll have to do all of that unless you decide you want to go in and change one of your preferences. And we'll get to what we call now the patient dashboard. So you can see in the left-hand corner here, my caregiver account is viewing the patient, Atticus. And on the dashboard, I'll see a list of new and in-progress surveys. The very, very first survey we like people to do or recommend that people do is the head-to-toe survey. This is a pretty short survey that takes 10 to 15 minutes that goes through symptoms from your head to your toe, and you'll select yes, no, or unsure about if you have those symptoms. Here's an example of some of the questions in that head to toe survey. Have you had issues with your head, face, and neck? Yes, no, or unsure. And it will go through different domains like this. If you answer yes or unsure to having issues in one of these categories, that's what will populate additional surveys for you within that symptom. So this person has said, yes, I have issues with my eyes and vision. So when they go back out to their dashboard, they'll see that they now have additional, what we call level 2 surveys about their eyes and vision. If they select no, they will not see any other surveys about that. There's this red X in the top right-hand corner, which you can click anytime, and it will ask you if you want to save your progress. So you do not have to finish these things all at once. All right. Also in this survey, it will ask about genetic testing. And if you've had genetic testing, and again, if you have a report that you can upload. If you wanted to go upload that report at this time and you didn't upload it when you first consented, you'll be able to go here on the left-hand column to Documents. You'll be able to click Upload, choose a report. There'll be an option to tag it as a genetic test report, and then you'll see it here in your Documents tab. Those genetic test reports will be curated by our team and tied back to your data on the back end. So your genetic information will be tied to your data, de-identified. So these are an example of some of the level 2 surveys that you may get based on what you answer in that head to toe survey. So this person has these level 2 surveys on their dashboard because they've said yes, they have issues with the following things. For example, digestive, ears and hearing, endocrine system. So they've been given these surveys. Inside of a level 2 survey, it'll be a deep dive into that domain with some more specific symptoms where you can indicate if you see the symptom, when the symptom first appeared, and how old the patient was at diagnosis of the symptom. There'll be examples here to go into a little bit more detail. But if you feel that you have not seen something that you would like to indicate, there will always be a free text option at the bottom for you to add additional issues in that category. We ask that people try not to put any identifying information in this free text box. Our data team will go back in and clean that out to make sure your data stays identified, but it is helpful to be mindful not to put things like Bridget has had an aortic root dilation, because that will have to go in and be cleaned so that we make sure your data is staying de-identified. Once you complete surveys, they'll move over here to this completed tab on your dashboard. From the completed tab, You'll be able to view the completed survey, retake it, or email it to yourself. When you retake a survey, it does not override the data that you already filled in for this survey. It will just create a new instance of that same survey. So you can see that this person has completed the head to toe twice, once in June and once in August, and both exist there. All right, so that's kind of a great overview of the DCP and how to go in and start answering surveys. This is our support email that we encourage people to reach out to if they have any questions about how the platform works, if they're having any questions about how surveys are assigning to them, if they're having trouble logging in. I answer the emails that come into this RareX support email. Please also feel free to send feedback there. Well, thank you. And then we have a bunch of time for any questions you may have. Caitlin is on as well, and we can go over any questions that weren't addressed already in the chat, or if you want me to do any of them out loud for the recording, I can do that too.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Maybe before opening for questions, maybe I would just like to stress a few of the key points that you went through in your presentation, so that is very completely clear for everybody. Again, obviously, we'll be collecting a lot of data that is based on all the symptoms that your children have. Like you've seen, all the data is de-identified. So never the data that you respond in the platform will be tied to your name or email address. Those are separate. So this is a very important point that I want to stress. The other one you may have seen in the consent forms, questions of yes or no to sharing your data for research for commercial purposes. This by no means mean that somebody will be making money out of your data. But let's say a biotech or a pharmaceutical company that is developing treatments and is interested in looking at our disease to see whether they might have something that would make sense for us, that would be considered a research for commercial purposes because the company is developing a treatment. So it has nothing to do about selling your data to, third parties. Also, I mean, obviously, again, you're the owner of your data and the responses are obviously yours. And the decisions that you make about what to share and with whom to share is all yours. But obviously, we would encourage you to, share your data summaries and your contact information with us, the v-ATPase Alliance, so we can update the community about what this disease looks like in an aggregated form. So we'll know that, how many people have seizures, how many people have problems with, this or that. If you opt out, then we won't have access to that. And so I think we all lose as a community. Also, the genetic testing, I think that's very important. I mean, all of us should have a genetic testing, otherwise we wouldn't be diagnosed with a v-ATPase disorder. That's very important because we'll know more than what we just discussed in our group about, oh, my son is V0C and V1A, and those are the genes. But then there's a deeper level than that, which is exactly the mutation, if it's a deletion, if it's a change in the gene, which for most of us it's hard to interpret. But if you upload that genetic report, the RareX team will read it. And again, it will de-identify it. So it's not that everybody will have access to your genetic report as you upload it. Is the information, the relevant information about the gene that will be in your data file. But again, it's de-identified. And I guess, I think this was very clear from the presentation. This is all symptom-based. So no one needs to be a doctor or a PhD to be able to participate in the study. It's all about the symptoms. And as you've seen, it starts with a very high level assessment, like do you have problems with vision, problems with the central nervous system. And as you select yes or no, depending on the symptoms that your children have, you have additional layers of information. And it gets deeper and deeper as you start choosing the symptoms. And this is sort of how we're going to characterize this disease as a whole, because obviously then we'll have the different pieces from the different people. Yeah. Oh, and also very important, if you respond to these surveys one time, we get a snapshot. as the disease progresses, you always have the chance to go back and repeat some of these surveys so that if new symptoms come up or change in somehow, that information is very important because what we want to understand is the natural history of the disease, how the disease progresses. So that, you know, potentially if we find some treatment, we want to assess efficacy. So we need to know how the disease progresses to see if this treatment is changing that trajectory. So, you know, just wanted to stress these points because I feel it's really important for this to have, you know, be valuable for, you know, for what we want to achieve, which is, you know, accelerate treatments for these diseases. So I'll pause here, but and see, you know, what questions you might have.
Yeah, I want to call out just the questions in the chat for the sake of the recording. So does RareX ensure that researchers have ethical approval for research? Yes, we have an application process for researchers and a review committee, and they're going through those applications to ensure that researchers are meeting the requirements and the standards before they're accessing any de-identified data. And then the other question in the chat, do we need to upload raw genetic data or genetic reports good enough? Genetic reports are great and what we're looking for. We do ask that you submit the entire report. So we have all pages of the genetics report, and that includes the materials and the methods section so that we can curate that back. And any other questions?
Also on the genetic reports, would we also want, say, previous reports that were done before, say, exome sequencing was needed? Like, say, just even like the microarray tests and other ones that showed a whole bunch of, I imagine this is a very common thing that all of us went through. They gave us a lot of, what is it, variances of uncertain significance. Yeah, so all those, would you like those as well, or?
Yeah, I think if you're going to upload one, the one with your diagnosis is the most important, but I think adding as many genetic test reports you have makes the data the most complete. So even if it is a report with VUSs or a negative report, it still can be curated by our team and would be good to upload there. Yeah, if you're going to upload one, definitely choose the one with your v-ATPase diagnosis, but
Yeah.
it is also a great place to just store them all so you have all your genetic reports in one place.
Great, thanks.
More questions or impressions?
It sounds amazing. And I think, Louis, you already answered one of my questions, which was when we upload the reports, do we need to de-identify them ourselves or will they be de-identified? And you've answered that, which is great. I suppose the only other question I have is there's some of us who are very early on this journey with the ATP condition, but there's some of us that have been a number of years. When we're undertaking the surveys, do we undertake them on a snapshot in time and then redo them like you said? Or when there is that past history, is there provision in the survey to, I suppose, mention what had happened previously?
Yeah, so the way RareX is set up right now, it's set up to be a snapshot of when you are taking that survey, what the symptoms are, and then with hopes to log back in maybe yearly or as symptoms change and update. We have received feedback from groups that, you know, adding some sort of historical, you know, survey would be helpful to be able to indicate what symptoms were in the past, especially for some of these newer groups. That's not currently something that we have on RareX, but it has been brought up and is like an internal discussion that having some historical surveys could be useful.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
I would definitely, yeah, I would definitely second that because obviously we'll be now collecting data prospectively. But if we had a way to retrospectively also have that information of progression, because obviously, you know, we have some kids that have 1-2-year-old and others that are teenagers already. And so being able to, from the get-go, have that information would be super valuable.
Yeah, we're definitely looking into that. It's a balancing act between making sure that the data we collect is usable and research level and validated good surveys while also being able to get all the data that we want. So it's in the conversation.
So just to be clear, when we do the surveys, it's a snapshot at that point in time.
Correct.
Moving forward.
Some
Perfect,
of the
thank
surveys
you.
will say things like, in the past 3 months, have you? And then that would be the case, but generally speaking, default, it will be a snapshot of symptoms at that time that you were doing the survey.
Also, again, there will be a lot of surveys, and as you respond to certain symptoms, yes, there will be more surveys in your dashboard. Like it was said, you don't need to do them all at once, so you can do it at your own pace. I mean, we would encourage you to try to, on a weekly basis, try to address 1 or 2 surveys that might be available on your dashboard until you're clear. Also, the RareX team is always working on developing new surveys. So you might have a notification at some point in time saying, hey, a new survey was developed to assess something that it might be relevant for you. So keep an eye on that. You should go on your email, and also us at v-ATPase Alliance will be looking into what's coming, and we'll let you know, of course.
And please send anything to that support email, whether it's having trouble getting in, questions about surveys, how they're worded. General feedback is also very accepted. So anything you can think of, that RareX support email is the best place to go.
Sounds good. And obviously this recording will be shared with all of you and others that weren't able to make it today. But also we created a resource that we'll be sharing that actually goes through the different steps of the consent forms. So we did screenshots of everything and have some comments so that you guys can look into that. Maybe one question, which currently RareX is still, I think, just in English, which certainly will put an obstacle to folks that are not so comfortable, especially answering these medical symptomology questions in English. But and Bridget will definitely be able to say more, but there's efforts to launch more languages fairly soon. So
yeah, we have by the end of Q1, hopefully late this spring or early this summer, we'll have Spanish, Portuguese, and French available on the data collection platform. If Spanish, Portuguese, or French are not one of the languages that are helpful for you, we always encourage people to use the translate feature on their browser. If they feel like they have the capability to consent in English, at least, they can feel free to translate the actual surveys using their browser. Coming soon, the consent will be available in English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese.
Maybe I can take Laura's question from the chat. Well, first of all, Laura, welcome to this community. Unfortunately, no, there is no treatment for the ATP6 V1A or other v-ATPase genes that are, that is directly or directly addresses the causes of the disease. So unfortunately, the only thing that we have available is really symptomatic therapies for symptoms like epilepsy, for instance. And even though for those they're not worked so well for these conditions. So yeah, short answer and unfortunate answer is no, but that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish with the v-ATPase and with this alliance and partnerships with RareX or partnerships like this with RareX and other research initiatives is to de-risk the development of new treatments. So it's going to be a journey. Well, maybe if there are no more questions, maybe we can wrap this up. And again, myself, Christine, Anna Rita, folks at RareX and Global Genes will always be available to answer questions that you might have in the future. And yeah, we really hope that you embark with us on this journey and so that we can take the best out of this data collection program, which I think will, again, like I said, it will be really, really valuable for us in the future.
Yeah, it's an exciting community effort.
Thank you. So let me stop this recording.